So hello, everyone, and thank you so much for joining us here at the Farnsworth Galleries online today. It's a crisp fall day out in Rockland, Maine, and it's a perfect day really to join us with a cup of tea or coffee here as we talk with Dr. Judith Stein about the work of Red Grooms. We have a great lecture ahead of us, and so I'm sure you'll have lots of questions at the end, and feel free to put your questions in the chat box at the end, and we'll be happy to take a look at them and ask Judith what her thoughts are on them. Red Grooms, just to give you a bit of background, it was a multimedia master, really very multifaceted, too varied for just one art historical label. He was an artist who really takes the world too seriously not to be amused by it. Born in 1937 and spending his early years in downtown New York, he spent a very vital summer of his career in 1964 in Maine when he was painting and making movies here in Maine with a wonderful community of creative artists and friends. Just to give you a bit of background about our lecture today, Dr. Judith Stein is a writer and a curator specializing in post-World War II American art. As curator at the Pennsylvania Academy of Fine Arts in 1985, she organized the first major traveling retrospective of the work of Red Grooms. She is the executive vice president of the American section of the International Art Critics Association and the author of the prize-winning biography, Eye of the Sixties, Richard Bellamy and the Transformation of Modern Art. And so without further ado, I'd like to present to you today, Dr. Judith Stein.
Hi there, nice to be with you. Yeah, Red Grooms is somebody I've been thinking about for a long time, and he's just so much fun to get to. So I'm going to start looking at my images, and if I did this right, I will share screen. And yes, there we go. So I have started with a quote that comes from an artist that some of you in Maine may know, and beyond Maine, which Lois Dodd, venerable artist who is very part of the art community, both in New York and in Maine. And when I and Susan Danley were working on the Farnsworth show Slab City Rendezvous a few years ago, I found this quote, and she said, "You are always influenced by the people around you. How do you find out who you are if it isn't from other people?" And that seems to gave me the sort of underflow of images that I began to look at with Red, a singular artist. But in the words of Bette Midler, you got to have friends, because that is how we figure out who we are and what we do. So let's see, I go to my next one here. This is a painting by Red called Slab City Rendezvous, 1964. The title refers to Slab City Road in Lincolnville, Maine, and it was done the summer that he spent a summer in Maine. And just to give you the idea, these various people up on the roof, and in fact with his head jutting out above the painting, is Rudy Burkhart. All of these people you're going to hear again about. Alex Katz has his thumbs planted inside his pants pockets. That's a friend of theirs, a boy on the bike. Yvonne Jaquette is the artist in the back with her newborn baby, Tom Burkhart, who grew up to be an artist. The string bean fellow in the front is Edwin Denby, a close friend of Yvonne and Rudy's and a renowned dance critic. Mimi Gross, Red's wife, is tucked into a rocking chair reading, and that's Red Grooms. He paints himself just slipping in the side door, red head available. And obviously there's probably a pail of blueberries that he's picked. And that's Ada, Katz, Alec's wife, with the other pail. That summer that they were all in Vermont, Alex and Ada had their own house and the rest of that crew were sharing a house. They did a lot of art individually and together. This is Red's documentation of something called Maine Room. And again, he plants his characters in this, but this is not a flat painting. This is a three-dimensional work. And it's that ability to go between 2 and 3 dimensions that Red is just a genius at. And here are these cutouts that Mimi and Edwin Denby, Rudy Burkhart, Yvonne Jacquet, Red himself with the red hair, is just gives that sense of communal comfort together. Let's leave Maine, and I'm going to be moving back and forth in time, and I'll try to keep you cued as to just where I am floating through time. In this image, you see a work called Matador from 1955. This is Red's juvenilia. He was a teenager when he did this, but I show it to you because I want you to see what he started with. That is to say, he was a talented kid, and he came from Nashville, and those are 2 of Nashville's monuments there. Excuse me. Yes, that's the Parthenon, but it's the Parthenon in Nashville, which it is one of its proud to have. And the Grand Ole Opry is another staple of the life of Nashville. And so this is where Grooms grew up. And knowing that she had a talented son, when his mother saw an article in Life magazine on the great teacher Hans Hofmann and his school in Provincetown, she said, you should go to Provincetown and study with Hans Hofmann. And that indeed was something that really helped get him on his path, get Red going out of a career that he was certainly a talented young man, but he was headed in a whole different direction. This is a painting by Hans Hofmann, bright colors, abstract. And there is part of the challenge that Red faced, because when he got to Provincetown, and there on the left is a photo of Hans Hofmann teaching a group of students in Provincetown, Hofmann really preferred to talk about the abstract nature of art, and Red was doing figurative work. Hofmann said, oh, you're doing little dolls. Well, anyway, Red dropped out before the end of the term and got a job as a dishwasher, and he befriended, or they befriended him, a couple who were running a little gallery on Commercial Street. You see that sun up in the sign there? That is the Sun Gallery, just a teeny little place that ran shows for a week. And Red and the Von Jacquet and Val Falcone, who were running it, just clicked, and they were the Sun Gallery brought up people from New York. They gave shows to them, and they too had been part of a group of young people who were kind of no longer interested in abstract expressionism, which was the prevailing style earlier. Life magazine had an article in 1949 called, "Is Jackson Pollock the greatest American painter?" And it was a very provocatively titled one. And so between 49, when abstract expressionism was, Pollock's style was just coming to more a wider audience than the little coterie of avant-garde artists in downtown New York. And when Red was in Provincetown in 58, it was no longer so excited for young people to follow in the path of their elders. This painting that Red did in 58 of swimmers has that kind of drip gestural style that he would have seen in the works of de Kooning and Pollock and Franz Klein. But he had his own way of doing things. One of the things that he did with his new friends was happenings, brand new presence in the art world. It was theatrical, but not like the theater. In fact, anybody who was expecting a polished presentation would have been quite disappointed. This was more of a fun project. That's a Red on the left with that pointed hat and white pancake makeup. And that's another, the one is in color on the left. Whatever the story was, they made it up. It was short. It was painting in the process of doing the happening was often a part of it. You can see that paint can on the right. There were many people beginning to do happenings, but Red was really a pioneer of this movement. When the summer ended and Red went down to New York with Yvonne and Val, and they set up a little living place and a gallery called City Gallery. And on the right, you see Red delivering a painting to an exhibition. This is downtown New York, in a baby carriage, and that kind of seat of the pantsing it, nobody had any money, and they did what they had to, but they were making art. On the left is Alex Katz, Red's 1961 ink drawing of Alex Katz, who had been up in Provincetown, had a show at the Sun Gallery, and they knew each other from there and continued to be friends in the city. This is a poster, there, done a linoleum block print, I believe, for a show at the City Gallery, or maybe it was the Delancey Street Museum, which Red had two different galleries. And we don't talk, there was no supporters. He had no patrons. They just, they wanted to do it and they did it. They found the space. Delancey Street Museum was in a former boxing gym that had posters, boxing posters as part of the setting. And the artist who did this, that poster was Bob Thompson. I show you a photo of him on the left with some of his paintings and a sketch that Red did of Thompson. Sad to say, this young man died at the age of 28 in 1966. And if you're in the Wadsworth Atheneum in Hartford, they have just a gorgeous painting of his, and you'll find his works around. They were part, it was a cooperative. It was a collaborative effort to run that gallery, and Bob Thompson was one of the people involved. Jay Milder was another of Red's friends who was involved in the galleries. And I show you here his photograph, not from when they were kids, and one of his works on paper called Subway Woman, and from 60. I show it to you because subways and the city were a source of inspiration for almost all of the artists who were friends. The excuse me, the one on the right, and this might be Rumpelstiltskin if I asked you to try to name the artist who did that, because if you're familiar with Klaus Oldenburg, you know his pop art work, but this is before pop art. And this was an installation he did called The Street in 1959. Very rough, well, street. He picked up, a lot of this was made with paper and things that he found on the street. But that rawness, that energy of the raw was something that he was working with then, and Red would do as well. The word influence here, I'm not going to use it, or if I do, I don't mean it anything direct. What I'm trying to paint a picture of is a community where ideas just pinged back and forth among this group of friends, and they would take it in different directions. One of the things that Alex Katz was doing was cutouts, and this is Alex Katz cutout from '62 of Frank O'Hara, the poet, and it is three-dimensional. But when we were working on the Slab City Rendezvous, Red said, well, you know, I was influenced by Alex, and we both were influenced by Bill King. And that is a work not from that early '60s period, but King was a sculptor who made cutout figures, and he was for a time married to Lois Dodd, and was very had a strong presence for the young people around him. Here's Red's sculpture of Alex Katz, and to work three-dimensionally, as I'm saying, is an idea that those around him were doing, and he was doing it too. And those silly feet, and Red is really can be funny about feet, were made from candy boxes of Nashville's favorite candy called Goo Goo Bars. So these are Goo Goo Bar boxes underneath all of that paint. And this is early '60s. One of the people that Red met in Maine was Neil Welliver, who really lived most of his life as a mature artist in Maine. And he was a presence that he kind of pioneered the idea of you could go up to Maine and you could get housing. You can buy an old farm or whatever for really almost no money, and you could actually fix it up to live in it. These are two of Neil's paintings. His way of working was to paint from the image or do many different studies on site, no matter the weather, the season, and then take those studies back to his studio. And so that's by water and a forest view on the right. Well, Red and Neil were friends, and the work that I'm showing you on the right is a construction made out of scrap wood called the Lumberjack. That's on the right, and you can see he's signed it, and down on the bottom it says for Neil. On the left, and that is it. It was cast in bronze and painted. So there's a couple of those that exist, and it's, as Red understood, for the ages as opposed for the wood. So, but it's this playfulness with the materials, the actual materials of wood that he was able to translate into bronze. he didn't leave the image of lumberjack alone. Here's another lumberjack by Red with a nod in the summer that he went back to Maine in '77. And it's just another, it's a relief, low relief sculpture. In this group of friends, they were friends in the city, and they were friends in Maine when they vacationed together. On the left is a sketch by Red of a walking figure. That was one of the images that really fascinated Red, and he did it in many different versions. And on the right is a photograph by Rudy Burkhart of the street, of people walking. And it was done at least 10 years before Red did his. It's just that they both were attracted to people walking, the public life on the street, what people do, how they stand, their body language. Rudy was a Swiss-born artist. He was a photographer, a filmmaker, and a painter. I'm showing you some of he worked small scale as opposed to Neil Welliver, who worked quite large. But some of these works, also done in front, right in the woods, have that a Welliverian feeling to them, if I can get away with saying that. Red worked in different ways with three-dimensional sculpture. This is his work called Rudy and Lupa. It's Rudy Burkhart and his dog, and it's done in from 1964. And it's this interest in three-dimensionality in his work would find different ways to be expressed. That summer that they were all there in Maine, Red painted cows. And it was probably, this is Lois Dodd's cows from a little earlier. I don't think there's no influence. And in fact, if you're in Maine and you want to paint the landscape, you might well find cows, not without trying too hard. So, but they share a love of the landscape and an interest in the shapes, the interesting shapes of the animals. Red met a young woman in New York when he was in New York in the early '60s, Mimi Gross, who was the daughter of the sculptor Chaim Gross. She was planning on going to Florence for a trip, and she went, and Red went to visit her there. And they joined forces and took a little wagon, a horse-drawn wagon, and went around various places in Tuscany doing puppet shows. This was painted, this Red painted in Italy of Mimi Gross in 1961. We're zooming back and forth in time now. This is 1964. Two paintings of Alex Katz as the model. The one on the left, and I apologize for that funky slide, is by Red. And the one on the right is by Mimi Gross. You saw that they were both, they got married that summer in Maine in 1964. And whether these were painted, whether it was the same modeling session, I don't know, but they have related but distinct ways of drawing and painting a human face. Now Alex turning the tables. Now he's looking at his friends in 1964. That is on the left, Yvonne Jacquet and Rudy Burkhart, Mimi sitting with a bouffant hairstyle, and Red with his pale and his red hair, and another version of that painting on the right. So their energy that just kept on being shared back and forth by this group of friends. In that summer, 1964, they made a movie together called Lurk. Rudy was the filmmaker, and Red did sets, and it was his directorial debut. It was called Lurk. It was a parody of a Frankenstein movie. And on the left is a photo of Mimi as the love interest. And who played Frankenstein? Red. That is the dance critic Edwin Denby on the right in some silly white wig. So in this movie, Alex plays one of the townspeople harassing the monster in downtown Belfast at the end of the film, and he plays a punk, is dressed some sort of like Marlon Brando in The Wild One. The monster eventually crushes him with a paper mache boulder, and then Neil Welver played a woodsman who battles the monster with a chainsaw and ends up crushed by a log. And and all of their friends were in this film. Very funny film. Filmmaking was, Rudy Burkhardt introduced Red to filmmaking. And the first one that he made and made with Mimi and Rudy was Shoot the Moon, which is a still of which you see on the screen. And it was made in 1962, and it was a send-up takeoff of a 1902 film by the Frenchman Georges Méliès called A Trip to the Moon. Again, it's just a delightful, surreal trip. Here is the moon, big as life, the paper mache version that Red made. The man in the moon never looked so good. And somewhere in the movie are these symbols that the scientists used. It has that kind of almost Keith Haring-ish look, but this is 1962. More films of Red's. This is called Fat Feet, and that is Yvonne Jacquet standing with those enormous tootsies, and that is Red playing the unsavory looking character on the left. And this also is a scene from Fat Feet on your right. He made more films than I could ever talk to you about in this time. And I'm going to switch to one of the genres that he really made his own. In fact, he gave it his own name. It was called Sculpto-Pictorama, in which it is a narrative, it's a sculpture, you can walk in and through it. And the first major one that they did was called City of Chicago. And when I say they, this is a joint project with Mimi Gross and Red Grooms. And there you can see the loop and the train chugging past. If you look on this archway, it's hard to see, but maybe you see a fireman and a cow and a woman in yellow raising up her hands. That's Mrs. O'Leary, because the story went about the Chicago fire, 1877, I think, which was Mrs. O'Leary's cow kicked over the lantern, and the fire then soon got out of control. Here are Red and Mimi in, now you can see the cow and the Mrs. O'Leary a little better. They're also, you can see various scenes of that. That's the Chicago River with its 7 bridges on the left. And I think I have this, another one of the bridges. And this is Mayor Daley and Hugh Hefner, the two outsized figures there, towering over downtown Chicago. That is a drawing by Red. A lot of these works began by going on site and making drawings, and from those small drawings, then larger ones, the images were made out of, could be paper mache or painted on vinyl or canvas and different things. Here you have Red and Mimi working on, not sure what Mimi's working on there, but their work together on this City of Chicago and Ruckus Manhattan was a true collaboration. They worked very well together. They had a good rapport. Mimi did the research for the work, and there is only one in the project that she signed, and I'll show you that, but otherwise we can consider that they both added to it. This is George Washington on Wall Street, looked at from well below, like you can see up into his nose. And the odd perspectives and viewpoints was something that they really enjoyed. That was Red. He loved the slight exaggeration of scale. On the left is the Brooklyn Bridge and a boat in the East River. Ruckus Manhattan is just unlike which there is no other. It is just an extraordinary work. It is so beautifully observed city. Red had a feeling for costumes, for the details of city life. So this is a newsstand, obviously, and this was the part on the World Trade Towers. Obviously, it's always poignant to see this part of it, and the poignancy is stronger when you learn that it was after it was shown in 1976 when it was made, and it was packed away and kept in storage largely. The section of the Ruckus Manhattan of the Twin Towers was destroyed by Hurricane Sandy because the water destroyed where it was being stored. Other parts of this is an old folks home here, another welfare hotel, artist lofts. He's, all kinds of things. The elevated highway, and lots of things to delight when one could get in there and kind of just look. This is the entrance to the subway downtown, and people buying tickets and walking through this stations and getting on trains. And well, it's just an extraordinary panorama of transportation within the city. Sometimes just looking at these is just so much fun because there are always details that oh, I didn't see that before. Well, there's the Marine and Aviation, the tugboat, and the Statue of Liberty. And that one, Mimi Gross worked on herself, and this is done in '76. So you see those very big red platform shoes. More. On Wall Street, people just hanging out, sitting on the steps, waiting, marking time. People sunbathing on the roof I think I fell in love with these details a little too much. Oh, there is Red in his subway car. That was the one of the things about Ruckus Manhattan is that you could enter it. And so the public could walk through it. And here is Red in this setting. And if you have ridden the subway, you know, pre-COVID, of course, how snug it could be. And so all of the characters that one sees in New York, he's worked into this tableau. And this is the porn shop part of the work. And so some real sleazy characters and Red's interpretation of it. There's, you see some of the videos that he's painted, you know, love those Quaker couple in the video called Straight, and then Toesies and fruitcake and all of that kind of thing. Yes, I don't have to tell you what that is, you know. Two more disreputable characters in the porn shop. Some of those themes from Ruckus Manhattan were too good just to leave to that work. And Red has been plumbing the riches of the subway, for example, in many different works. So this is done I think in the 80s of the subway. Or a more recent work of his, and Red works every day. And I haven't seen his quite recent work, but he's continues to work in a way that you would recognize and like, I'm sure. So this is when the street gets torn up and people have to pass around and through, and the characters he sees. Another bookstore, but it's not Ruckus Manhattan. Well, here's Tennessee's other great star, Elvis Presley, standing outside of Graceland, and this is Red's version of Elvis. Art history is something that Red likes to tip his hat at when he's working on his own. And this is his three-dimensional or low relief sculpture on the left of a man walking his dog. And I show you on the right a early 20th century painting by the futurist Giacomo Balla with that dog, and it very much clearly was in his mind when Red was in Red's mind when he was working on that. This is Penn's treaty with the Indians, William Penn, from the 18th century. And it lives in the Pennsylvania Academy of Fine Arts in Philadelphia. And it shows this moment of the meeting of the Quaker Penn and the native Lenape population. And Red used it for inspiration for a work of his own version of it, brightly colored, intensely colored, but also using his stick out technique of having things come out and away from the background. Probably all recognize Edward Hopper's Nighthawks. of an intersection at night in an all-night dive, I guess, when people are just sitting at the counter. And that guy behind the counter does have red hair, as does the woman there. Well, this is Red's version of it, Nighthawks Revisited. And he himself has put himself in the role of the soda jerk or the clerk there. It is not, however, nighttime there, or it might be, or at least Red envisions people on the street, as well as cats prowling in garbage cans. This is a print edition that Red did called Dali Salad. And he chose to make an image of Salvador Dali because Dali, when it was his turn, when Dali was working on his career and he made prints, he would make them in offset litho, and there would be thousands. Usually a print run is a very limited thing. It can be as little as 25, maybe 100, but Dali had his runs in the thousands. So this is a kind of poke at Dali using the medium of print. Other print editions that Red did, obviously, this is Fats Domino playing Blueberry Hill. And just like some of the buildings in Ruckus, Manhattan that sway to and fro with exaggerated perspectives, you find that here in his work as well. London Bus, also an edition as a print. One of my personal favorites is Our Lady of the Badminton. And it takes the shape of a Romanesque, 11th century sculpture of the Madonna and Child. So there is is Mary with her vertical nose made out of wine corks, her hair in the stylized way the Tuscans would have done it, are here as hair rollers, a carton crown, and the Christ child is holding a shuttlecock or a birdie. And it's a very clever way of referencing the bird that you would see in Renaissance paintings and sculptures of the Christ child with the little bird, which symbolized the soul. So Red gave it a fresh interpretation. His interest in sports is broad. This is obviously a three-dimensional sculpture of basketball. The history of the movies is a theme that Red returned to often, and that's Buster Keaton down below with his characteristic pork pie hat. And I'm just forgetting her name. This is looks like Lauren Bacall, but it isn't. It's the woman who specialized in wearing her hair over one eye, an actress of the 40s. This is a pull toy that Red made called Nuclear Nuts, pull toy, in which Ronald Reagan and Brezhnev, they take turns when you pull it. Either Reagan bows a little bit in front of the Russian, and the other way around. When you pull it the other way, the Russian bows in front of Reagan. And so it's a kind of humorous take on a very unfunny situation. When the Pompidou Center opened in Paris, it was a controversial sculpture. Red here shows his version in 1977 of the city of Paris wearing, dubiously looking at the crown she holds of the Pompidou Center. Artists, Matisse. Here, Red is taking his love of color and pattern and envisioning Matisse painting his nude and replicating one of, not replicating, but at least paying homage to one of Matisse's own paintings. And I think that brings me up to the point where I will say that I just, you know, in his 60-year career, Grooms has been so many different artists that it's difficult to assess his impact in full. He was a budding expressionist in the 50s, a radical performer in the 60s, a superstar installations artist in the 70s and 80s, and in more recent years, a public artist creating quirky carousel full of references to national history and various art that is more public than not. So I think that I've really asked you to hold my hand as we went zipping through various genres that he did, various decades of interest and different themes. And I call this talk that he said he was a maximalist, but he came to his artistic maturity at a time when minimalism was just coming to the fore. He was an outsider from the sort of narrative of the unfolding of modern art, one style into another. He and Mimi and their friends were figurative when abstract expressionism was just kind of losing its great interest for young artists. And figuration has always been his, the way he liked to work. That doesn't mean that there weren't abstract qualities in all of his work, but only now is sort of figurative work. Not, it's come back over time, but it is, we can look at him freshly in light of a renewed interest, shall I say, which has renewed periodically in the 20th century, but in figurative art. I think I'll stop there and ask if there have any questions. And I will do that. And have I done that?
Yes, feel free to share us your thoughts about the lecture and ask us questions. And Dr. Stein, that was just a wonderful talk. And I personally really enjoyed, having this sort of chance to look at the very sort of whimsical creations, particularly with his sculptural works. So I have my own question, but I do see that there's a couple forming in the chat box now. One actually was the question regarding a sculpture, and it was the question of, can you provide dimensions of Ruckus Manhattan?
Oh, the dimensions. Well, room size. I don't have them specifically, but it was in, it was originally shown in a large kind of like a showroom, so that where, yeah, I'm sorry I don't have that to hand, but it just, think of being able to walk in and around and through these pieces. Yeah.
Great. Now that certainly gives us an idea of scale, certainly. And actually another question about that same work, and where was it exhibited and will it ever be seen again?
Okay, so it debuted in New York City in 1976, 77. Then I believe went into storage, and periodically parts of it. I'm not sure that the entire ensemble has been shown again together. I could be wrong on that. I just don't know. But for example, when we did the retrospective at the Pennsylvania Academy in 1985, we had several parts of Ruckus Manhattan, particularly the subway, where you could, the public could walk into it, and it was mounted on springs, so it sort of simulated the tumbling around and the rocking motion that you might experience on the subway. And I know that periodically parts of it do get exhibited.
And I'm just curious, you know, he obviously is using so many different materials in his sculpture. And, you know, I, as a Phyllis Wyeth Director of Learning Engagement, I'm always looking at artists and how we can learn from their techniques. Can you just speak a bit to his sort of use of found objects and just a little bit more about the materials he was using for his sculptures? I mean, it seemed like paper mache as well. Were there other materials being used?
Mm-hmm. So I was just rereading some information about Red. When he visited in Mimi in Italy, he was doing mostly paintings. But when he came back to Manhattan, he began to work with found objects. And basically he said, you know, in Italy, there weren't so many interesting things on the street, but, you know, in New York, you'd find all kinds of things. He worked with pickle barrel covers that he found, or odd crates that you could break up, and pieces of cardboard. So those are some of the materials. And when they were making other things, their studios were near Canal Street, and you can get anything, or you could get anything in Canal Street: spare parts, odd lots, all kinds of screws and threads, and what, you know, sky's the limit. I don't know.
So a medley, to be sure, certainly.
Yeah.
And while we're all having these dialogues right now about climate and sustainability, you know, the use of the found object has been with us for a long time. So, so just a couple questions coming up here. Was there any connection between Red Grooms and Bernard Langley? And just an observation, again, sort of on the very whimsical nature and also just of their work, and also their use of wood, and wondering what the connection was.
Well, when I wrote my essay for the Slab City Rendezvous, I was really focusing on the kind of New York crew, and the curator of the show was Susan Danley. And she really does know Maine artists in a way that I don't, alas. So I really can't speak to that specific question. But I don't know if the Farnsworth still has copies of the catalog that they produced. Here it is. Here's the Farnsworth Slab City Rendezvous catalog. But it has some wonderful pictures, and it has Susan's essay, which talks more than I did on the Maine connection.
Wonderful. Well, thank you very much. And I just had one other question. Someone was asking if where in Maine did he live? Now, did he live over in Lincolnville around Slab City, or was Red Grooms living somewhere else at the time nearby?
That one summer of 1964, they rented, he and Rudy and Yvonne, and he and Mimi and rented that house, and it was on Slab City Road. So, but that's really the only time that I believe he lived there. The other works that I think after that, he would have been a guest, you know, invited to someone's home. So I'm not up on all of the different locales that he would have been in. But obviously, because he kept making work that relates to Maine. It was dear to his heart.
Great, great. And one more question. Do you think there's sort of been a revival of interest in Red Grooms, certainly over the last few years? I mean, obviously, we had Slab City Rendezvous, but in general, do you think there's been a revival in interest of his work?
I don't know that I can say that. He shows at the Marlborough Gallery, and they have had some really wonderful shows of his work of late. And there are other shows. But when I talked about a revival, it was less in reference to Red's work specifically than a revival of interest in figurative art. If you look back in the last, 50, 60 years, there are, well, the art world is cycles. That is the nature of art. And there have been times when figurative work became the new image painting of the 70s and so on. But I think we're seeing more interest in figurative art right now, especially with the interest in art by African Americans and African artists who are working more figuratively than abstractly, if I allowed a generalization. And so I see that as a kind of interest in ways to paint the figure that are not in classic realist style. So that's why I've said that.
Right. Well, I want to thank you again, and what a wonderful opportunity it was to talk with you about Red Grooms. And in fact, you had mentioned Susan Danley, and in fact, she will be giving a lecture in a couple of weeks here online. So on November 4th, we will be with Susan Danley for her Berenice Abbott lecture. So Dr. Stein, we are so delighted to have you with us today. And I really, again, thank you very much for sharing all of your thoughts and ideas about Red Groom. Just a really interesting figure. And again, so dynamic and multifaceted in many ways. And really want to thank all of you too for supporting us here at the Farnsworth Art Museum and tuning into our public programs online and seeing us in the galleries. We're so happy to have you with us, and we really want to thank you and come see us again soon. Thanks very much.
Bye.